Hey, welcome to Talking in Stations. I'm Matterall. Today we have a full panel and a full week of news about EVE Online. Let's get right to it. I want to introduce Arsia. How are you doing, Arsia?
All right, thank you.
We have Suitonia with us.
Hey.
Actually, we should probably say what you guys do so people who are just learning your names and stuff can figure out. But Arsia, you're like Faction War Roleplay, Edencomm, and you're an FC for Small Gang, correct?
Yeah, a lot of small to medium gang PvP, some solo ESS stuff. I did faction warfare for 7 years, and I have a variety of stuff. I'm really RP focused in my gameplay.
Yeah, RP focused and a lot of small gang PvP kind of things and FCing. And Suitonia, everybody knows you, but just for people who are arriving to the game, what do you do?
I mostly do solo or small gang PvP, and I had a really popular YouTube channel that I haven't really uploaded to recently, and I'm a popular streamer that streams solo and small gang PvP, and I'm in WeForm Volta.
That's right. And you hung out in Thera a lot, and you were also a genius at theory and basically fitting ships and strategy and that kind of stuff. I love telling people they're geniuses when they're actually geniuses. All right, we have another genius. Hateless is with us. Hateless, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. My content primarily revolves around highsec PvE, and I just kind of have fun and enjoy the game.
And cats.
Yeah, the byproduct of life.
Yeah. All right, and of course, everyone knows Elise Randolph. Elise, how are you doing?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. And yeah, I agree with you. Like the genius comments are complete understatements. Like these people are just complete all-stars at what they do in EVE Online. It's great.
Yeah, it's taken us a while, but we've collected like some of the best players in their perspective areas because there's so many games inside of EVE Online. At least you're one of those players. What do you focus on?
I do a little bit of everything nowadays. I used to be an FC for a large group, Pandemic Legion. Now I don't really FC too much anymore unless it's like super desperation times. But I just tinker around in EVE and stick my toe into all the pools that I can find just to see how it works and get a broader understanding of like the stories that I don't actually get to experience otherwise.
Yeah. You're being super modest. So he tackles nullsec for us, the larger themes of nullsec and what goes on politically. And also he can dive deep into history and of course all the FC and decision making that's happened throughout history and why it's changed and evolved. These are the kinds of things Elise can pull right out of his hat, among other things. But also Alliance Tournament and of course leadership of a large coalition. So that's Elise Randolph. And we also have with us an old favorite who's coming back as the everyman to ask the questions that are for returning players, and that is Niden. How are you doing, Niden?
Literally the idiot in the room that can ask the dumb questions so all the smart people can sound smart. Thank you very much for that intro, Matt. I appreciate that.
That's why I said you'd be perfect to host this, because that's what a host does. All right. And we also have for Wormholes today, Teddy, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're good. Teddy, tell us where you're from, what group, and your background.
Sure. I'm a director in Foxholers, which is Outfoxed, also known. We're a C4 wormhole corporation. And we like to just run around with Drekavax and fly no Logipraxi.
And you've been in Wormholes for how long?
About 6 years now.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, well, we're going to talk about an eviction attempt on you guys that you were able to fend off, and we'll get to that in a little bit. First, I want to say thank you to CCP. Talking in Stations is now officially a partner of CCP's, and yeah, we want to celebrate that. So everybody at Talking in Stations in some way is partnered with CCP through us or individually. We're actually happy to know that Suitonia was already accepted, Hateless was already accepted, and Arsia will probably be accepted soon. and Elise is with us. We're claiming him. So a lot of good stuff going to happen in the future with some support from CCP. It's nice to see them get that off the ground. So congratulations to us. Okay.
Does this mean I'm going to get paid?
Yes. Now we can actually allocate some, as editor, we'll allocate a little bit per word that you correct, which will be a lot in my case.
I'm no longer a slave. That's so good. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the topics now. Just a little bit of news here. There was a tax holiday over the last weekend. I don't know if you guys took advantage of that. Inside the game, I'm talking about 50% off your taxes when you were selling something. Did you guys see that? Notice it?
Yeah. So when you sell items, there's a tax rate. They got cut in half during the holiday. And it's basically everything in Jita went on sale. Like that's TLDR. Everything in Jita was on sale by like 5%. And so you're able to buy a lot of things drop in value by that 5% during the sale. After the sale, they kind of bounce back up. And they do this every, for at least what I've noted, they've done it every Black Friday.
Well, I have a question then. I have a question. What does the business mogul do in a situation like this? I mean, how does people actually do this? Do they play this somehow? How do they make money off of this? There's got to be some way they're doing it. Right? They buy up stuff and just stock it up and then resell it back, or what do they do?
It's really hard. The market adjusts really fast to this. People are like, 5%. Well, people are always competing on the market, and the market is very responsive in some ways. But if you get in before the market shift, there's always profit to be made.
Let me jump in as I'm not a tycoon, but what I did was sell stuff as quickly as possible that was bulk, like the big stuff. So I dumped a bunch of, and I have a funny little story. I dumped a bunch of minerals, right? Probably not the best move, but I'm not known for that. And in doing so, I accidentally put the quantity, I was selling pyrite. So I wanted to sell I think it was something like 50 million. I put that at the price. And when I hit enter, it took away in broker's fees, something like 39.9 billion. So it was an instant, like something's wrong. My spidey senses are off. So watch where you type in your stuff. Don't put the quantity into the price or you'll end up making a completely unadjustable sale of something that will never actually sell. Luckily, when you make a mistake like that, go ahead, Elise.
Oh, no, continue.
When you make a mistake like that, you can actually ask CCP for some intervention and they will make you whole again.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you do end up making a mistake like that, you can always try petitioning. And oftentimes these are really good about that, especially when it's clearly that you're not trying to do some devious market manipulation or something. You just put the button in the wrong, or put the amount in the wrong box.
Yeah, so don't lose hope. Don't leave the game. Contact CCP and see if you can undo an error like that. It's probably easier for them to undo errors than it is for them to donate or dedicate a bunch of time to developing a new interface. So,
also one thing that while we're just briefly on the subject of CCP helping out, if you are coming back to the game or you left the game for some time and left your sub going but forgot to have your skills going, like me, I had an alt that I put 6 months of training on, and the thing never hit start and then just closed it. You can petition and be like, hey, mistakes were made. Is there anything you can do here? And oftentimes they'll be like, okay, you've been paying for a sub. You have been trading nothing for 6 months. Here's some SP that you can allocate wherever you want.
Well, that's so that nice. I actually have a friend. This is a good little funny story that will fit in nicely. A friend of mine, he's coming back to EVE after 12 years of being away, but he's had an active account a lot of that time and not trained anything. I should probably tell him about this, but he's
yeah.
He's like, is Stayland still around?
Here's a casual 150 million skill points injectable.
I have a history book that you can read, which will be news to you.
Yeah, exactly. It will be news, not history. That's hilarious. It's like coming back and saying, is Athens still the place to go? No, that's ancient history.
I know, right? It's really nice. It's really nice to see somebody that was there in the beginning come back after so many years. He's literally like a noob, but he does, you know, he's got that feel, you know, he remembers this is Eve, this is what it feels like, but he's horrible at flying. He has literally, like, we were sitting on a gate with him today and he says, where are you guys?
It's kind of amazing to think about how much the landscape changes, like, everywhere and over like so many years. Because I remember, like, years and years ago, like when I started PvPing, it was Pandemic Legion camping on Mamake with a Titan, right? And Claire's at Elise.
Oh, by the way, speaking of returners, Sir Mole was spotted in T5Z. Now, for those who don't know, he was one of the early leaders of EVE Online inside of the Evolution Corporation. He's the one that formed up with Reikoku and other groups, Bob. And correct me if I'm wrong, Elise. And he's been, I think his last fleet was post-Halloween War, so it'd be about 2014. I was on that fleet, actually. It was a dreadnought fleet taking out towers. Very uneventful. But it's interesting, and we've interviewed him, so go to talkingendstations.com and type in Sir Molle, M-O-L-L-E, and you'll hear an interview with him, and you can figure out who he is in history, if you don't already know. But it's interesting to see him back, you know, at least visiting the game. He didn't say anything, but it's there. Okay, so the tax holiday, again, Niden, just to answer your question, it was a good time to sell things, especially expensive things, because you're going to save 2.5% that you would normally just lose. So if you're going to sell something, it's the right time to do it, and that's, I think, what the incentive is. Another piece of news from CCP is the Mac client is going to go native. And that just sounds funny when I say it, but they're going to build it so that it can work on the next iteration of OS, Mac OS, which is fantastic. What we don't know yet, and we might want to get CCP to give us a little more information on this, is this going to work with the M1 chip, which is just starting to come out from Apple. And it's a pretty good and efficient chip, so we'll see if that helps out. But, I mean, the headline is that Mac client is not going away. It looks like they're actually going to invest into it. And here's my one thing. The new M1 chip can play your apps from your phone natively on the computer. So is this like, if they build it for something that works on M1, can it actually work on your iPhone or iPad too? Could this be like a weird way into EVE, proper EVE Online on your iPad? Who knows? We should find out. All right. Speaking of holidays, let's talk about what we found on Hoboleaks. Suitonia, what'd you see there?
Yeah, so there's been an update on Singularity. You can go to the site Hoboleaks to take a peek at them. So from what I can see on Hoboleaks, there's going to be a new Metaliminal Ice Storms, which will be part of an event. There's going to be Sansha NPCs there for you to kill. It's going to be ice to mine, and there's going to be exploration and hacking sites there too. So mining, there's going to be mining, hacking, and just normal PvE content with the event. What's interesting is there's going to be new filaments that directly teleport you to the ice storms. The ice storms, I assume, will work very similar to how the current Metaliminal nullsec storms work, and they'll be in highsec, lowsec, and nullsec. And there's new filaments that can teleport you to an ice storm in highsec, lowsec, or nullsec. So there's specific filaments that let you teleport directly to highsec, which could have very interesting ramifications. And I think Hateless was talking a lot about it before we went live. So if he wants to talk about them, that would be great.
Yeah, so the events provide a very cool way for them to introduce a new mechanic into the game. This is how we got Filaments. They came into the game last year through the holiday event, and they ended up being such a great hit that they're like, well, we need to make this a permanent part of the game. So now we have our need reject noise and signal filaments, which are a lot of fun to use. And they provide a way to get out to nullsec. This provides the inverse, and they're introducing it in an event again. So I'm not sure if it's something that they're going to do, if they just want to test it, and being able to come back to highsec from nullsec without having to go through the gate camps or traveling 50, 60 jumps. You can actually get your assets safe or whatever you won while you're out in nullsec. It makes it very much accessible to players. And if we do introduce a way back in, it makes it possible to live in highsec and then go out and get nullsec content of whatever kind, PvE, stealing ESSs, finding a fight. There's a ton that you can do in nullsec, but gives you the ability to do this in a short time frame, and that in itself can be incredibly valuable to the game because it makes the average player that would play EVE Online much broader. So we don't. It would make it less niche and make it more. I know some people hate this, but make it a little bit more arcadey, where you kind of log in, you have fun for the day, or log in, you have fun for half an hour, 20 minutes, or however long you have, rather than having to commit 3 or 4 hours to participate in nullsec activities or commit a substantial amount of time to have fun.
Elise, go ahead, Arsia.
So, right when the nullsec filaments first came out, I would probably have seen this as a little bit egregious, but now with the POC-VEN filaments existing and the ability to yeet to POC-VEN and then yeet to low or high sec, depending on with the minor victory filaments, I don't know that anything has changed besides skipping a 15-minute wait in POC-VEN. So it's maybe not as outrageous as some people seem to think to be able to yeet back to higher or low sec. Normally when I yeet to null sec, I'll have a depot and probes with me so I could just go back via wormholes. But considering there's yeet filaments to POC-VEN and yeet filaments from POC-VEN to high and low sec, it's just streamlining the process a little bit.
Yeah, and that makes the game so much more playable. I feel like one big deterrent to playing EVE Online is, well, you got to commit like forever to play this game, and being able to sit down in the chair, log in, get content within half an hour, and then be able to log off is absolutely fantastic.
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
I was listening to it when I was getting back now into the game. I was listening to some podcasts just to get my feel for the place again. I was listening to what's it called, Under 10 or whatever it's called.
Less than 10.
Yeah.
Less than 10. It was an awesome show. It's really good. Anyway, They had an interview with what's his fucking CCP name now?
Rise.
Kill 2. Rise. There you go. Thank you. Rise. And he was saying, like, just in the environment that EVE lives in today, in gaming today, it's just not viable to have the kind of longer sessions that I guess EVE players were used to back in the day, and still are to some extent. But it has to cater to the sit down and more arcadey feel of log in, get something, and get out. Otherwise, I mean, he wasn't saying it that way, but he's saying essentially, like, to survive, EVE has to do this.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, Elise. Hold on, that's what I was going to say, Elise. When I was throwing it to you, isn't that the way that CCP is developing the game? And it sounds like CCP Rise, as most people know him, was saying, yeah, that's the reality of the business right now.
So
I do want to add.
Let Elise talk, and then you can jump in, Hateless.
I was just going to say, this is something that Rise has kind of, I don't want to say been on a crusade about, but he's really been the pioneer and champion of this mentality that, hey, I want to add activities that still feel EVE-like, but that you can do in an hour without having to devote like a 6-hour session. Otherwise, EVE is never going to grow. We're going to lose out to people that want like an instant gratification. The key here is, though, that it has to feel EVE-like. It can't just be like, oh, this is going to be a quick Fortnite game or something. We're going to throw a free-for-all in there, or we're going to make Rocket League in space or anything like that. No, it has to feel genuine and EVE-like. So as Arsia was mentioning, there already are mechanics where you can take a filament back into POC-VEN and then go to highsec that way. So this is just a 15-minute streamlined process. So instead of just going through just this annoying wait 15 minutes and do nothing process, just send people back and forth the way that they can already.
Well, this reminds me of sorry, Arsia, you'll go right after this, but this reminds me of Mad Max, the guys on the bungee cords that kind of swoop in and grab you and pull you out, that kind of thing. Anyway, go ahead, Arsia.
I think Elise is spot on. They have to strike the fine balance of I think it's good to have stuff that you can do in a short amount of time, because sometimes you only have a short amount of time to play. but it has to not be at the cost of the other activities that might take longer, and it has to feel like it's Eve, or else Eve will lose the niche that has kept it alive.
Go ahead, Hateless. I cut you off really good.
So adding into that, so it doesn't take away from the nullsec activities that happen. People still need to produce stuff. People still need to hold space. People still need to rat if that's what they do for us. People still need to do the things that do require time commitment, but it's not required in order to play. So there's an arcade side, and then there's also that dedicated hardcore side that's not going anywhere, because that's part of the game. And I feel like that's going to continue to keep nullsec alliances moving and breathing. They still need to keep that kind of core, like, we still need to hold our space. We still need to have these ops. This still needs to happen, because you'll be able to play in a shorter amount of time. You won't be able to play the in-depth, like, holding space game, but you'll be able to play and have fun, which is important.
It also gives people the opportunity to go out and experience nullsec and have like a little bit of a safety rope, or like, as Matterall put it, the bungee cord back home. So there are a lot of explorers that just tinker around in highsec. They're intimidated to go to 0-0, and occasionally, like, if they take normal means to go out there, they'll get stuck at a gate camp and possibly die. And so they're left with two choices: either don't go to nullsec, or join a nullsec block and just be a random F1 pusher, like, right? And you don't really contribute to the, you don't really contribute to the ecosystem if you join a nullsec group only to do nullsec activities, like nullsec PvE activities and nothing else. I feel, which might be kind of a shitty statement to hear, because I know it does happen, right? So a lot of the people in nullsec right now, or at least a good portion of them, they joined not because they wanted to be in the wild west of EVE Online. They didn't want to stake their claim. They didn't want to put a name for themselves. They want to start feuds. They're just like, I can make 50 million an hour here, or 300 over here. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do that. So this gives, people a way to do that without having to join an alliance like that, which we still want people to join corporations. We just don't want them to be a faceless number in a corporation in an area that they don't want to contribute back to.
This might help people who want that kind of nullsec PvE activity, but want to be in a smaller corporation somewhere else, or that's not interested in holding space. So I think it actually frees up more choice for joining corporations.
And what are the size of the filaments?
I think that there's a few. Let me. I can scroll down 1 second.
Yeah, while you check that out, I just want to say one last thing on this whole design thing and the way CCP is designing the game to be a little more friendly to people who have short bursts of time, because that's the reality of video games these days, or time. And lament that virtual world and simulation gets lost in that scenario, or it takes a back seat because it gets interrupted by people who are coming and going, I suppose. But time used to be the blocking mechanism against PvPers, and that's something that Sheep had as their defense. It's like, you can kill me, but you've got to fly a long way to do it. And you might get bored and you might not find me, and I can hide. That's my evasive maneuver. But we'll take that topic up another time.
Yeah, so there's 1-man, 5-man, and 10-man varieties. So you can only bring back, like, I guess, a smaller fleet. Like, if you could do a nullsec 25-man one, you wouldn't be able to bring back the entire fleet. But if you're just solo, or you've got like a sub 10-man gang, you would be able to get back to highsec. And
just to give a little bit more insight into the storms that are coming, because you never know what. Well, I guess you do know when they're on Hoboleaks, right? CCP hates it, but you want to be like assured. CCP Fozzie recently came on the Twitter. He used to be like very active on Twitter. Now he's like sparingly active. But someone had mentioned, Chocolate Rain had mentioned that she wanted to do a weather stream forecast, and Fozzie comes in with like this weird cryptic message like, "Oh, this is a good time to do weather forecast," and then just leaves and doesn't follow up on that at all. So. There is a bit of a teaser that new weather elements are coming into the game.
With the storms and the being for the Christmas/holiday season, and it being a Sansha NPCs, do you think it's a Santa Claus joke?
I hope so.
I think it's a Sansha Claus joke, right?
Fozzie would make that. Anyway, we do have a weather report. If you want a weather report, we have one on the newspaper that we send out every day. Sign up, mailing list in-game, TIS News. That is TIS News. You'll get a newspaper every day that has what's going on in the world that players are doing. And we also have occasional weather reports and some financial news too. Okay, Suitonia, what else is in this Hoboleaks that we expect in December?
So we're finally getting the last implant set out of the implant sets that they teased at FanFest in like 2016. So this is the new Rapture implant set, which is the second Sansha implant set. All the other pirate factions have a second set, even though slaves were technically the first Sansha set. But yeah, so these are just going to give you a cap regeneration. So I imagine these will be very popular among people doing PvE activity, and potentially popular among maybe like faxes. I'm not too sure on that, but we'll see. Do you see these being useful in PvE, Hateless?
Yes. There are situations where capacitor is a very important factor, and only having the 2-5% implants is fairly limiting in fixing that. But capacitor is incredibly valuable in certain setups. Looking at remote reps and local rep builds, you can get, if you don't have to worry as much about capacitor, there's a lot you can accomplish.
Yeah, they could also be useful maybe on like solo logis too, like if you're flying a Scimitar or a Neros and it's a solo fit.
Yeah, it also gives additional AWAR resistance. Like there's several situations where I can imagine having an extra 20 to 30% capacitor on a ship would make or break a build.
What about wormholes? Would that be useful in wormholes?
I'm thinking they'd be useful literally everywhere.
Let me throw that to Teddy.
Yeah, I could really see their use if heavy armor was still quite a big thing. Regen apostles would be, I think, become meta. Just because they can just get some insane cap regen anyway, and then with these they would almost become required.
I think with the nerf that lets Fax only have the one capacitor booster, this might be a real choice between the armor or shield HP and the capacitor regen for them.
Yeah, Genolutions used to be kind of useful too, but they only gave you like, I think there's like 4.8% cap, 4.8% regen and some fitting stuff. So yeah, there's definitely going to be more option for a lot of ships. And like a good thing about this implant set too, right, is having more cap regen is literally useful on like almost every ship in the game.
Yeah, you can run bigger prop mods, you can run more reps, you can run more EOR. There's things that consume a lot of cap, and making one or two of those mechanisms work on a ship is difficult right now, and making that easier would definitely allow new fittings to come in and compete with old things. I can really imagine this being useful in the Abyss, as electrical filaments are fun because you get the cap regen, or the additional cap regen. You can fit your ships pretty wildly for that. But I do feel that this would make a lot of builds that would only be viable in electrical viable in other weather types as well, which is really exciting.
So if you oh, sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you want to be like very rich overnight, there's a pretty standardized way that CCB rolls out these implant sets, right? So there is an in-game event that's tied to them, and as Suitonia mentioned, there's an in-game event coming in December with Sansha. Sansha, of course, are going to be dropping these implant sets. So you will do these sites, whatever the PvE sites are. You should do these sites, and they will almost certainly drop these implants. And there's going to be like a limited time where this is the only way that you can get this implant set is through these drops. And these guys are mentioning just how popular they're going to be. So you can make just tons of money in like 3 or 4 days if you just try hard and run all these sites, or as many as you can. Generally, the highsec ones drop the very low power one, or the very low strength ones, and then nullsec and lowsec have the better ones there. So the high grade and the mid grades happen there. And then there's going to be this weird window where there's nothing else you can do with there's no way else you can get them. You can't get them from the LP store or anything. So you can make like tons of bank being like for supplying for the first ones to get these. So this is a really, really good way to get rich quick.
I was just going to say, it's just too bad they're Sansha implants, because you plug them in and you lose your brain.
Well, you're nailing it today, Arsia. Well, the thing was, back in the old days, it used to be like, if you were in a capital ship, cap was life was the term that people, little phrase that people would use. Elise, is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, it very much is, right? And especially these guys who do wormhole and small gang stuff, they know that the best way to fight capitals is to nuke them out and to make sure they have no capacitor. Because especially when you're talking about apostles and triage, the amount that you can heal your allies is directly proportional to the amount of capacitor you have. And if you fall below a certain amount, you get like in this cap dead cycle where you can never recover it. So just cap recharge is massive. And also, I don't know if you guys remember, right towards the end, when off-grid links were just being removed, there were a bunch of really weird fits that were going around, where you could fly like a T3 ship very often that would have an extra large pith shield booster that could run forever as long as it didn't get neuted with cat batteries and off-grid links. And they made them like really fun, indestructible ships if you were taking on between like 0 and 10 people or 0 and 8 people in lowsec. So I also think that this is going to bring those back a little bit.
So I did want to ask, so these are competing directly with things like Asclepians, crystals, and the slaves. Are they going to be actually effective for capitals? Because I know that some implants, like Asclepians and crystals, do not work on capital ships. So are they going to work on capitals or are they not? Do we know?
I assume they would.
I mean, with Asclepians and crystals, it's because it applies to the armor repairers and the shield repairers that have different size modules. It's not like you have a capital capacitor. It's just a capacitor.
Yeah.
So it should apply the same way, like the armor amount applies. That not slaves, what is amulets have.
Yeah, I imagine they'll apply to capitals, and it will give people a decision to make. Hey, do I want to have 50% more shield, or do I want to have higher camp recharge?
Yeah, just something to note, because in the past, like, that's something that happens, and it is competing with those implants, especially in highsec, where we use an implant set based on the builds that we're using. Especially in Abyss, we have very specific implant sets that we use. And this would compete directly with those, because if you have an additional 50% cap, you might be able to fit 2 large shield boosters rather than 2 medium shield boosters, and this completely changes how you would fly the ship. Or you might need 1 less cap battery. You can put something else there. It just kind of depends how this affects it at the end of the day. And also, this is going to be more flexible than Asclepians or crystals. That's what I'm comparing it to, because that's what I'm used to using. But I could definitely see it being good and very powerful in the case of apostles and other faxes.
All right, and then there's also going to be Tech 2 Salvage Drones coming in this thing too, which is going to make Dunk Dinkle very happy. There's even a new faction drone called the Dunk Salvage Drone, which I'm really going to enjoy, because whenever I kill someone, I'm just going to keep one of them in my drone bay, and I'm going to launch one of them.
Wait.
Just as a subtle.
Dunk has a drone named after him now?
He does now, or he will when this comes into the game. This is all again on Hoboleaks, a test server, but or a test database. But it will, yeah.
Way to go, Dunk.
T2 Salvage Drones for life. Yes, I'm so happy about this.
Is this the first time they've named an item after a player?
There's been like novelty Christmas items that are named after players for a while. Like, I like the Salt Dragon's Guide to Diplomacy.
Yeah,
they gave away like a few years ago.
Oh shit, I remember that. That was so good.
Yeah, I'm hoping they have a few more of those, because those are always fun little I don't know, just fun little nods to the community. There were some mods, like the Entosis mods. There was an event that was held, and if you won the event, you could name whatever Entosis mod you wanted. So there's a Sphere Entosis mod.
The T3 destroyer blueprints have people's names on it. Like a lot of the Amar RPers are on the Confessor blueprint because they raised the most
oh, that's
little
right.
thingamabobbers to get the Confessor to come out first.
Yeah, because you had to compete to see which one came out first. And
So like,
Amar,
the Confessor won mostly because of the Amar RPers. And so like Lunaris and Ascentior are named on the blueprint.
And you also have regions in drone space. Those regions are actually named after alliances that competed at the time for the new space that was opening, because drones came later after the game started. And you also have, again, Entosis links are named after people. But they've always been a kind of a competition, and people kind of had to earn it, and then you could get your name or a variation of your name alluding to you.
I'm sure Dunk earned it somewhere on the CSM. Like, I'm sure there were some CSM meetings where he just pulled someone aside and was like, "Hey, I need this to happen. What will it take? I'll run outside naked if you want me to."
So he campaigned.
I don't know, man. Dunk is like probably one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
He convince anybody of anything with his puppy eyes.
This is I'm going to push back on this though, because it's the first time I've noticed they overtly took something and named a module after a person, and it's very clear it's Dunk Dinkle. That's it does have some meme value though, Suitonia, that I love. That was hilarious, but it is a departure from the way CCP used to do stuff. It's almost like a generation more than they used to do. They used to release gag gifts at Christmas that were useless, but they had a little bit of joking quality about key players in the game. But this seems very overt to me. And I love Dunk. He's a real life friend. Everybody loves Dunk. But it does feel like they've either crossed a line or stepped up to a line in a big way by naming a module after a person. That's a permanent module and whatever. Okay.
I do think just one thing. I do think one part of that is a change in personnel at CCP as well. I could be completely wrong here, but I believe CCP Falcon used to be the one that did the Christmas gag gift things modules, or at least he played a role in it.
So, sorry, go ahead, finish.
No, and so that could be why you're seeing that sort of generational departure, just because the personnel is different now at the game.
So I think that this particular instance isn't egregious. Like it's fine, but I do think there is a trend towards going away from the game world and maybe like the in-world news, even though there's fairly semi-regular updates to it still. Great work from CCP Delegate 0. It's like not visible. It used to be like in the game when you'd log in and you could see like what happened in the world. And now players have to bend over backwards to find that even on the website. It's not on the launcher. And like this is stuff that has caused big wars, like Flossus when it was caused by one of the bigger wars in lowsec ever was caused by in-game news. So like it seems like a lot of the newer CCPers don't appreciate, like maybe not appreciate, it's not the right word, but they don't emphasize the world and the lore the same way that it used to be emphasized.
That's a good point. I feel like that's a deeper topic. Probably we should have a breakout session about lore and its evolution where we're at now. Because it seems like what I worry about is what happened to Star Wars, right? Like we have too much fan service, because then you're taking me out of my game because I know where that's coming from and it's real life. And so now you've interrupted my escapism. And that's one of the things I worry about with too cozy a relationship with the player base. It would make the game feel smaller if you have all the reference points. So maybe that's just for us that are too experienced, that we know all the reference points, that new players won't understand what's what. But it is an interesting dynamic that they have to balance as a team. But I don't want to do that today because we have a ton of news. So Tony, is that the last thing?
Yeah, that's the last thing when it comes to the sort of the holiday items on Hoboleaks. There's new skins and things, but it's harder for us to discuss them. I'm sure we could talk about them for half an hour, but you probably want to get on to the war, right?
You know what? These things are coming. So we will get in December a chance to talk about all this stuff among the holiday parties that we have and the most influential of 2020 show that we're going to have near the end. We're going to do all that end of year stuff. So we'll get to that. This is the first year in the decade, so we don't have to do the whole decade, or we could do the whole decade. Who knows? All right, let's move on to the next thing, and that is the actual in-game war that's going on, the big war in the South. Keepstar was stolen in K6. What happened there?
So from what I can tell, and someone maybe can elaborate on it, but Big Bill the boss was unanchoring one of his personal Keepstars, and he's tongue-in-cheek says that he thinks that the date was wrong from CCP. He thought he had unanchored it 6 days prior, but it takes 7 days to unanchor. So he said either the game screwed up by a day, or what is almost entirely certain, he probably forgot. So until like just a few minutes before, like there's no force, there's no ping. The Imperium had like no idea that this was happening, so he just tried to scoop it on the low key himself. And I think Pittsburgh was flying through and saw this happening. He was like, wonder what this guy's doing here. And came in and NC Dot and NPL swiped it out of their noses and got the freighter off. So it was a fun little moment. It happened like just a couple days after the Revenant died, right? So there's always this little back and forth, like, oh, we gave you a Revenant, you gave us a Keepstar, thanks guys. Secret Santa is kind of weird this year.
Wow, they really took advantage of an opportunity that is not easy to take advantage of. That Keepstar only fits, if I'm not mistaken, it may have changed. They may have changed the mass of the packaged Keepstar, but it used to only fit in a Charon or Charon.
Yeah, you need the Caldari freighter to scoop it.
Yeah, with 2 expanders on it, at least, which makes you slow and vulnerable. And that used to be the case. I don't know if that still is, but to get that specific freighter with that specific, well, that fit would be easy to get, but to jump it into system and to do that so quickly, that took a lot of teamwork.
Yeah, and it's something that happens, like you don't plan it. It's not like, oh, this is on the books for a couple days now. No one really had an idea to keep it there. But yeah, so the personal Keepstar down. It's not like an institutional one. It didn't have like a strategic importance to the Imperium, right? Also important to note that when you do an anchor a Keepstar, it asset safeties everything that was inside of it, so no one like lost all their stuff either.
That's how they knew about it. The asset safety email came out to one of the guys who had recently switched sides, and they're like, oops, look at this alert. Go ahead, Hateless.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the term personal Keepstar.
Yeah, that really goes to show why we're in this forced poverty mode, as they put it, because individuals just accrued so much wealth that a personal Keepstar isn't unheard of, right? It's just a thing. They're just like, oh, I got a bunch of money. What should I do? Oh, let's plant a Keepstar in the system I read, and I don't think it's the last one either.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a penthouse in New York and another to have an island, right? I have my own private island. That's what the difference is. But it is, again, one of the things that was really cool is that came down to one of the, like a legendary EVE player, Tar Palatier, I think, from NC Dot. He's a scout that is well known to all the FCs in NC Dot. He's been around forever. He's part of Evolution. And he's the guy that was able to just say, I got the freighter here, hand it to them, and boom, they're able to go.
Yeah, a good scout and someone that kind of gets on the same wavelengths of the FCs is completely invaluable. Like there are certain people that entire wars are predicated on the relationship between a scout and an FC or something like that. It's this weird relationship, and it's like hugely important, right? And you can see when there isn't like a deep bond between a group of scouts and a group of FCs, you can see just someone screwing up, and you can see mistakes being made, and just kind of it doesn't run it smooth.
Oh, by the way, I want to make a correction, because Billy actually contested the idea that was a personal Keepstar. Said that it's just a way for the guy to get publicity by saying that sort of thing. And it wouldn't be beyond him, because I think he is a bit of a publicity hound, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely, like without a doubt.
I was going to say, don't answer that.
Oh, sorry. No, he's
too late.
He loves the attention. I'm sure he's happy that someone said his name on an internet podcast. He's probably going to print it out.
He who shall not be mentioned again, because he's looking for it. We try to put people back into the box that keep looking for publicity. Okay. God, I'm so excited because I have such brainy people with me today, and a bunch of news that came out. But let's go on from the stolen Keepstar, which again is a big deal, to the initiative deploying to Curse.
And that's massive, right? And this is something that I've personally been wanting out of the initiative for the entire war, right? It is actually, I shouldn't be, because it's the best place for them to be. So I'd much, if I were being partisan about it, I'd rather them just sit in a Keepstar and Delve and have their talent waste away. But having one of the most seasoned, best small to, or not small, medium to large sized roaming groups in the game, having them deploy in the backlines of the enemy for where you're fighting is huge. It's huge, huge, huge. The amount of chaos that they can potentially like cause back there. So that's a really good move for them. It gets more of their members involved in the war, I guess, right? Because you're talking about these members aren't necessarily, I don't want to say equal, right? But they're more talented than a standard line member, right? So throwing them in a Raven and just hurling them at a Keepstar is a waste of their talents. Throwing them behind enemy lines, saying, "Hi, go and just burn all these fields as much as you want," is great, right? It's what these guys signed up for when they joined the initiative. It's what they want to do, which is important. It's how they can keep their members motivated, keep them logging in, keeping them active. So like hugely, hugely important. And I know Maccloud probably can say this better, but GTECO and Curse is kind of like a spiritual homeland for the initiative as well. So that's a good move for them too.
It definitely is.
That's Maccloud, our engineer, who's putting up the visuals for you. He's from Initiative. Yeah, okay. So strategically, though, that leaves Fountain essentially undefended. What's going on there?
Well, I mean, it's Horde put the ping out when they move. Fountain is like a huge, important piece for them to take or reconquer. So they're going through and doing that now. It's important that, you know, they kind of do cut off the Imperium from going to Fountain. So they'd always have to bridge around and going through, like coming home, they'd have to go through T5Z. So it's very unappealing. Initiative and the rest of the people in Fountain were on the wrong side of that Y-2 ZXB gate. So not a good spot for them since they were cut off. So yeah, just reconquering that, and it is going as far as I can tell quite easily. There isn't a lot of infrastructure that was re-put back in the Fountain. There aren't like another 5 Keepstars to take down. Is not hugely crucial to the war effort, but it is a nice like feather in the cap. Like, oh, you thought you could take this back? You're wrong. I'm taking it back too. I personally, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish.
I personally think it's also a really clever objective to have around the holiday season, because it's not hard to do. It's not hard to retake Fountain, knowing at how you position yourself. So it's something that your members can do when they're like being with family or their playtime may be lacking. So you can say, hey, like during this holiday, we're not going to siege the goon staging system. We're going to do this like low effort kind of thing that's strategically important and relevant, but it's not like you're going to have to say, sorry, I can't hang out with you family on Christmas Eve. I got to siege a Keepstar somewhere. No, it's like low effort. You get to go take a thing. It's fun. You get to have fun with your space friends.
Does it really impact their ability to defend Fountain that much? I mean, it's not that hard to move around between jump clones, wormholes, and alts. I mean, they could theoretically be hitting over on the offensive front and still like be able to show up for defensive action.
Yeah, and the initiative have shown that they can do jump clone deployments incredibly well. They have a mastery of wormholes at their disposal, right? And they're the right size to use them, right? So they're not too big where they need 2 or 3.
I think if you live in Fountain, you probably have to get really good at wormholes in general, because I think just how it's not really connected to a lot of stuff outside of Cloud Ring and Delve.
That's why it's generally being considered a cursed region by everyone. Through the history of Eve, whoever has lived there has died, right? Because it's this amazingly secluded area where you have just bountiful resources, but the other side of that is you're in the middle of nowhere, right? So you have these big like warlord alliances move into the region, kick out whoever was there, pillage it, and then they just sit there because there's so much wealth to be made there. And the military people end up leaving because they're like, oh, well, there's nothing to do. We can't go anywhere. And so that's generally the cycle until the initiative came into Fountain. That's generally the cycle you would see in Fountain. Some fat alliance would move in, get rich, then a military alliance would go in, kill them, stay too long, fail cascade and die, and then a new like Care Bear alliance would move in, harvest resources, military guy goes in and dies. It's always been this weird cycle in Fountain just because of where it's located. But the initiative definitely figured out the answer to that, and that's like using wormholes to get in and out so you can stay relatively mobile. But I also don't think I don't think they care all that much either, to be honest.
Funny enough, I think, PL, or actually NC and PL, I think, during the wars of 2018, we staged in Curse, and were able to get to UALX relatively quick. Those were where our Dreadholts were. And that battle was, for me, one of the greatest battles of EVE Online's history. It happened in 2018. So it's interesting how tight those are. That's only like 7 or 8 jumps all the way into UALX from Curse. So we'll see what the initiative does in that area, because it's relatively, I think it's defended, but I don't know how well defended. A lot of people are busy in Delve trying to knock Delve out. So we shall see.
It's always good for your side from a morale perspective too. If you're in the Imperium, like, oh, we didn't really do well on this timer, but don't worry, our guys in the backfields, they got some new timers made for us. So that's like a huge morale boost for them. And I also think the initiative are in this really cool position where they're probably, Sister Bliss and the leaders of the initiative are probably too nice to take advantage of it, but they don't really have a home in Fountain. So they can pretty much go wherever they want. And the Imperium needs them as an ally. So they have so much leverage. They could say, hey, that's cool, Asher. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to do faction warfare for a while if they wanted to. Obviously, that would be dumb, but I'm just using it as an example. And the Imperium would have to say, okay, enjoy faction warfare. We'll be here when you get back, because we can't afford to lose you. You guys are too good. You provide like too much stuff. And there's nothing really tying you here because the region that you're in is gone. So they're in this really neat position that I guess you do get into by not abusing it. So I just found that neat. I was thinking about that this morning. But I'm still just endlessly happy that the initiative are in Curse. It just feels like EVE life is going back to normal, right? So
it's interesting. Well, they were playing kind of a strange waiting game in Fountain. Like I know they were fighting in Delve, which is right next to Fountain, but it did seem when they moved their jump clones to Fountain that they were going to be caught between two places without any real direction. And I do feel like their numbers have kind of softened up. So this might help them find some purpose in the war by doing some damage to Legacy in their home space while Legacy's off in Delve doing damage to the Imperium. So it's kind of a cat chasing a cat's tail.
Yeah, and crucially, like they didn't go to Stain, right? So they're not pushing into Esoteria. They're pushing on a different Legacy member. They're pushing on Brave and other people that live in Ketch, right? Because that's right next to Curse. So you're putting pressure on different parts of Legacy to see if, hey, maybe this part will break now if we're doing this, or we'll maybe divert their attention a little bit more and lower the numbers on the main front. So it's an interesting little tactic. It's strategically like incredibly sound for them to do it, and I'm glad they're doing it now.
They announced it a while ago, so they had the intention to go, I think, or at least we knew about it a while ago, days ago. And then this attack happened on Fountain, and Pro God Legend, or at least an Imperium source, Mike Flood, I think, was saying that Pro God Legend was saying that we attacked Fountain to try to keep initiative there instead of, and they were looking at it as some kind of a victory. Now, I don't know if any of that is true, if Pro God said that or anything, but what do you think about the attack on Fountain, and is that a leverage point in any way?
I mean, if you're thinking about this soundly, if you want to keep the initiative in Fountain, then you don't attack Fountain, right? Like you don't just remove that from them and make them suddenly homeless and let them go wherever you want. So if that was the plan, which I doubt it was, but if it was, really dumb plan. But yeah, I don't think Fountain was really important to the initiative at all. Maybe it was just nice to get rid of something, like just take something off the board for the PAPI people, but I don't know. Long term, they knew that they weren't going to hold it anyway, so that's why they didn't put any infrastructure in.
Right. They prepared for infrastructure to be put in, but I think they were waiting for the end of the war to see what they had left, then put infrastructure in. You're not going to lose it twice. So that was a smart play, because clearly PAPI is back to wipe out Fountain again and set back any progress there. So we'll see what happens. Okay, the other thing about the war is I skipped ahead. Faction Fortizars are being killed. The one in C3N died. I remember that I used to live in C3N during Thunderdome. That's the home of Nelly Segunda at the time. And I have fond memories of that station. And to see it get blown up was kind of sad. So I wonder, I heard that Vili, and he can confirm, he's in comments, has been offering money to say, look, don't make us destroy this Faction Fortizar. We'll buy it off you. We'll give you the money for it. Just transfer it to us. You're going to lose it anyway. And I wonder if even during war, because we've seen them work together, right? We've seen them work together in their mutual interest in the Tranquility Trade Center. When there's competition for that trade center or trade tower up in highsec, they got together and they were in the same fleets, destroying their competition and suppressing any competitors. So they can work together. The Faction Fortizar thing, it seems like they're going to trade legacy space for delve space or Imperium space. I wonder if they couldn't work a deal out saying, let's say moratorium on killing Faction Fortizars.
Well, so the thing about there's like two types of Faction Fortizars. There's the ones that moved over, and then there's like the memorial ones too. I think, and Jelly just said in chat that was, he only did that for the memorial forts, not for all the faction forts. Because for the faction forts, the more you kill, the more that the ones you hold go up in value. So who cares at that point? Because you're talking about it like a limited edition.
I have noticed them go up a bit, by the way. Anyway, but the memorial ones, how are those special?
So those were stations that were put there like at the start of the game, that were like the old ping pong stations that weren't dropped by players.
Back in the days of the eggs?
No, this predates the eggs even. These were just stations that existed in certain areas in nullsec. There are like in BKG, and then there's certain areas in 00 where there were just stations that whoever shot it the most got to control ownership of it. And then that got moved over into the new version of stations, which were the eggs. So that got moved over through the new Salve system. But this goes back to the olden times, where you couldn't even drop a station, right? There were only just random stations that existed in nullsec.
Old-timey stations, yeah. And I think in Delve, NOL, which is in the middle of Delve, is Knoll, has an original station. And I think there was only 95 stations or so that were memorial. There was a certain amount, or just over 100, I want to say.
Yeah, there aren't many, right? There aren't many, and they're a nice little piece of history in the game. So it is cool that the attackers are willing to burn everything but that. Who knows if the defenders are going to let that happen? Probably not, honestly. But there are neat little pieces of history.
There's no way to conquer that. You literally, if you're the owner of it, you can either somebody can destroy it to take it away, but they take it away from everyone, or you transfer it. So really, the people who own those memorial Faction Fortizars, the fate of it is in their hands. It's their, and in some way, it's their responsibility for what happens to it, especially when there's an offer on the table not to have it destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. And you know it's going to go away anyways, right? So are you going to just do it for a spite? Are you going to let it die out of spite? Or are you going to get something out of it and let it preserve until later? It's an interesting precedent that's being set, like when you're invading something to keep historical monuments in place. But I have no idea how it's gonna work, right? So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you invade a country, do you keep its heritage sites, or do you bomb the heck out of them? That's a really good analysis. Okay. We'll see. Eve history is dear to me, so I always feel for those Fortizars there. All right, let's move on to Triglavians attacking perimeter.
All right.
Arsia, what happened there?
So basically, if people don't know, within 3 jumps of where Pochven systems used to be in the map, wormholes can open up to those systems. There's always a static wormhole that opens up on the higher lowsec or nullsec in some case side, near where the systems used to be. Perimeter has 2 possible wormholes for two different systems that can open up in the system, leaving it something like there's like an 80 to 90% chance that perimeters can be hit like that every week, because unlike the other 3 empires, the Caldari state did really, really badly during the Triglavian invasions because the NPCs were really, really weak. So something like 58% of the Citadel systems can have one of these wormholes open, 47% of the Forge, 47% of Black Rise, and 38% of Lone Trek can have one of these wormholes open. So you can be attacked in almost half the Caldari state by Triglavians who are coming from one of the wormholes that opened up to the nearby Pochven systems, because they are still in space where they used to be. Like if you have a capital in one of them, you can jump out based on where it used to be. So these static wormholes are opening up, and the Triglavians will come out of the wormhole and roam the system and kill stuff. Perimeter will be invaded a lot. So it is something to get ready to prepare for.
Yeah, it's the new normal.
Doing autopilot is the pro tip here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe that they scram you.
They do scram you. Anchoring Triglavians will scram you, yes.
They actually spawn in highsec?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I got lucky. I was autopiloting a freighter on my first encounter.
There's not always an anchoring Triglavian in a fleet, but if there's one that's anchoring, it'll scram you. Yeah.
My question is, can they spawn anchoring? Because in the old invasion, back in stage 1 and stage 2, anchoring were never seen on gates. In fact, I had a bounty on somebody if they saw an anchoring on a gate to tell me. And
anchorings they weren't during like the first, like way back, like chapter 1. But in chapter 3, anchorings were on gates all the time.
I recall seeing them once, and it was, they spawned in response to warposts. So
warposts and gunstars, but also the roaming fleets had them. I did so many hundreds of hours of those things. Anchorings were in the roaming fleets as well. But warposts and gunstars. But those are still turned off, the warpost and gunstar response fleets.
Don't autopilot through, and you're screwed, I guess. Maybe they don't do a lot of damage. They're not going to.
There is an easy fix. If you didn't participate in the invasions, go to Pochven, kill 1 drone. You're positive with Triglavians. You're positive with Edencomm.
Oh, that's nice.
If you did participate with the invasions and you have negative Triglavian standing, you have to kill a lot more.
Yeah, the Triglavians don't like me and a lot of others, so we have to look into dealing with that.
Yeah, get your freighter alt, go to Pochven, kill 1 drone.
And
get your tick.
If you do kill that 1 drone, you won't get any negative Edencomm standings either, right?
You get positive Edencomm.
Okay, so you'll be friendly to both, and you'll never have to worry about anything ever.
Well, not anything ever, but not Edencomm or Triglavians.
Ah, that's so cool. So I didn't realize that the threshold was that low of just like 1 drone. I thought maybe it was like getting 1.0 standings and they'll
It's not
stop
1.0. They'll stop shooting you as soon as it becomes slightly positive.
That is so cool. So there you go. You heard it here. Go to Pochven, kill a rogue drone, and then you're good to go.
There's a better way to do that, actually, where you don't, because again, if you kill a rogue drone, well, maybe you're fine, right? But
you're fine.
But I've heard you don't even have to kill a rogue drone. You can actually just target paint one, let the NPCs kill each other, and then you generate the standing, and you get the salvage if you want. Go ahead, Arsia.
There are a lot fewer roaming fleets in Pochven because people were just kind of like tagging the roaming fleet stuff. So it's still, I think it's still possible, but most of the time you have to kill something. The rogue drones are really easy. There are little tiny rogue drones that come from the rogue drone carriers that you can basically just one-shot with anything. Like a jackdaw can one-shot it, like a coercer can one-shot it. And they're kind of a super joke, and it's an easy way to get standings. Like a new player in a coercer can one-shot these little tiny, smaller than a frigate drones.
Yeah. Because these things,
easy fix.
these things near market hubs like Jita, right? These are in and around Jita because there's so many Pochven systems in Kaldari space that it is a matter of time before a lot of freighters get destroyed, being oblivious to that threat. But NPCs can kill your freighter, and they will pod you too. I think I saw some floating corpses when I was looking at it.
They will pod you. I'm going to link in chat a new guide on how to get into Pochven, and it goes over the wormholes that open up and how they open up and where you should expect to see them. Yeah.
So these are Triglavians, not drifters, if that's what you're talking about. There's a link from Baleful Dysnomia. Check that out and get right with these guys before they take you out without you knowing it.
Well, they've actually, I was just looking through the kill board now in Perimeter. They actually killed a lot of stuff.
They killed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know some guys who were deliberately rolling the Pochven holes to try and get them to spawn in Perimeter too.
So, like, the one thing that I think is kind of bullcrap is that with the response fleets for the Gunstars and the Wereposts turned off, in the Edencomm victories, like Bay, for example, Bay is close to Kree-Rald. It's within 3 jumps of Kree-Rald, which is a Pochven system. So Triglavian wormholes can open up in Bay. But Bay was won by Edencomm, so there should be the response fleets for the Edencomm, but they're currently turned off. So the response fleets that we fought hard to earn aren't there protecting us from this wormhole that can open up there now.
If they were there, what would we see?
You would see the Edencomm killing the Triglavians. Like the Gunstar and the Werepost response fleets are a better AI than the roaming fleets and annihilate them.
I want to kill Wereposts again so badly. I miss doing that. I really want those response. I'm so mad that they took out those response fleets.
Yeah, if you've ever fought a response fleet for a Gunstar or a Werepost, the Gunstar being the Edencomm ones, the Werepost being the Triglavian ones, you land on the gate, they ping off to a ping like a player does, and then come down on you, like wherever you are. So they warp to a ping and then warp to you. And they're stronger, they hit harder, they have better AI. And of course, the Gunstars and the Wereposts both hit like a truck.
Smart NPCs, watch out. The world's getting dangerous.
They were honestly a lot of fun to fight. And I was fighting them from the entire third set of the invasion was that I fought Wereposts. And they're fun to fight. The AI was fun. They respawn in a strong force. You actually have to bring like a fleet, fight them. Like you can't, this isn't soloable. And it was a lot of fun.
It is soloable, but it's really hard.
Well, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
So one last thing about Pochven, since we're kind of on the Triglavian topic here, is it a moneymaker living in there and doing some activities?
I heard you can farm the world arc sites, but I don't know too much about doing that. I'm assuming Baleful and Hateless probably know a lot more than me.
I haven't done much in Pochven yet. I really need to get on that ball.
I mean, the sites, like the Convocation Watch Post and the drones and the Drifter and the Edencomm sites, they're just kind of slightly harder emerging conduit level sites that are soloable. Still, like the long range tactic works for soloing them still, so you can still use like Sniper Nagas, Tachyon Apocalypses and stuff, and keep your keep your distance. The world arcs do spawn in Pochvan. Those are really, really good money unless you lose your 12 golems in them. But that's just a stealth brag.
So Arsia was in a group that killed a whole multi-boxing group of golems.
It was like 12 or 13 golems and a claymore, yeah.
Yeah, those things are... What do golems go for right now? 1.6 billion each or something?
They
That's
went
for the
up
hull,
to get the
yeah.
torpedoes. Yeah, that's just the hull, and then the fitting is expensive too. That sounds like a great fight.
It was like 70 billion is killed of golems. 70 billion plus. It was on stream. It was on stream.
That's awesome.
And I think we covered that before, at least definitely on the Daily Show. But what was interesting about that is somebody had done really good reconnaissance, mapped out this guy's behavior, and describe what happened in that fight real quick.
So one of the members of PNS had been watching this multi-box armor run around Pochvan for about 2 weeks. And they got his safe spot. They scanned down his safe spot, caught that, and they prepared to get a gank on them. We went in on top of him inside the World Arc site, and we started shooting golems. The World Arc has a lot of NPCs, so both sides got forced out. I can link the VOD in a bit for chat. Both sides got forced out. The golem pilot bounced around for a while, went to his safe, but we already had a heretic sitting there and got him.
That's good work. Poor guy. Well, he's not poor if he could afford 12 golem.
He made that money back in an extra. Like, World Arc is like billions and billions and billions and billions of this, and he's been doing it for weeks and weeks and weeks. He made more than 70 billion.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ashtarothi was telling us a bit about the money to be made in Pochvan and other stuff. And really, there's a lot of... one of the interesting things that he said was you didn't need to fight. You could just follow around. The NPCs would fight each other and destroy each other, and then you could go around collecting their loot or their salvage and stuff. So
I think it's really interesting that there are so many, there's so much talk about how we're going through these poverty measures and resource redistribution and nerfing income streams, and there are still these random little treasures where you can find the guy that makes 100 billion ISK in 2 weeks or something by running these one thing. It feels like they're not necessarily nerfing income streams, but they're nerfing the institutional knowledge of how to make money from these big alliances. So someone like me who's been around for a long time knows all the ways that you can make or all the ways that you could make money. Now CCB's thrashed all those and trashed them, and the new people that are finding out that little tips and tricks are the ones making the money.
Another thing is that people have, with a lot of the money income streams being commodity based now, a lot of people have an incentive to kind of shut up when they have a good thing going for them. Before Pochvan systems were yeeted away, there was a period of time where you could just go into the final liminality systems and run world arcs. And to my knowledge, we were one of the only groups doing it. And we made a lot of money. And we were pretty much told, everybody, shut up, right? The stuff sold pretty slowly, right? But it was everybody was getting good paydays. Now everything went to Pochvan, and we don't run it as often, so I'm a little more afraid to talk about it. But when you have a good thing going, you have an incentive to shut up, which kind of does prevent the spread of that knowledge that Elise is talking about.
But it gives you that extra high of knowing something that other people don't, and the expertise to execute on it. And I remember when you find a gold mine, it feels pretty good. But what's interesting,
this is classic.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
This is just conversations like this bring to mind the classic Eve, what Eve used to be like. Knowing something was special. It wasn't all over the place. You couldn't watch fucking YouTube guides or anything. You found out stuff that literally no or very few people knew, and those things, if maybe there was more people that knew it, but they weren't talking to each other. So it was the sense of discovery. I remember this being a new player, and I don't think that exists today. Not even for new players. They kind of I need to make money, and they'll just Google make money in Eve and have 1 million guides and just follow the guides, and that's it, right? So I think it's cool if we can somehow introduce like developments to Eve that make it feel this way again, because I think that was really special, and I think it's been lost.
Well,
Yeah,
at least that's why I brought it up, at least because you said this is a change. Institutional knowledge is no longer relevant. It almost feels like a balance pass, not for modules or ships, but for knowledge about how to make money.
It definitely does feel that way, and it's always humbling to be able to find that new little niche where you can just make tons of money, and it feels, as I'm saying, it feels amazing when you find that one, because you're like, you've got a little swagger and stuff, like, oh man, no one else can make this. Everyone else is getting poorer. I'm getting richer, and you don't want to talk about it. Like, you want to brag, but you also don't want to brag because it's like your little corner.
But that's the additive communal feature that a lot of groups have, like subcultures and stuff. Like, you're into a band, right? Nobody knows this band because it's not popular. But when you meet somebody else, like let's say at a concert, or that you can connect with them. EVE Online is this way. One of my first articles that I wrote was called A Tale of Two Parties. And the first party was the rap for Star Trek something Darkness, Into the Darkness or whatever, which my wife worked on. So I went to that rap party, right? We're talking like hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million party on top of a hotel, looking out, trappings everywhere. Like, it was completely decorated. And then all the, everything that goes with a Hollywood party there. That was 1 week. The very next week was E3, and CCP arrived, and they rented the actual same floor. No decorations, nothing, no celebrities, nothing. And I had more fun at the Eve party. And so that's what that article is about. But what was so fun about the Eve party was, as I was walking to it, I was filling up with joy because I knew these were my people. Like, and that's that same thing. It's that connection of not many people know about it, but these guys do. They get it. And we're in this religion together, that sort of thing. I'm sure that's how QAnon works. That's how Depeche Mode fan clubs work. All those good things, right? Anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely, I can just echo that. I think I really love that about Eve, because it's so niche, it's so small, but it's kind of big. It punches up, because a lot of people who don't play Eve, they know about Eve. They've heard the stories, because of the way Eve is. You just run into people. It becomes like this nod, like thing. You find out this guy also plays Eve, and you see them in the hall at work, at the office or something, you just nod and they go, yeah, I know too.
Yeah, exactly. It's that secret handshake, right? Interesting.
Actually, that happened to me recently. The guy was my boss, so I changed positions at work, and I had this new boss, and he's this heavyweight business dude, right? And then something, I don't know, we were going home someday, and we happened to mention, I'm just going to go home, take it easy, and he mentioned something like, yeah, maybe I'll log on to Eve, like a throwaway comment, like thinking, nope, he's not going to get what I just said. And I said, what? Eve? And we just found out we'd both been, he's the same guy who came back after 12 years. And that conversation, which we had about 6 months ago, finally resulted in him ending up back in Eve again.
That's awesome. Is he with you, by the way? Or what's he doing?
Yeah. He joined up, like, so me and another dude who was, he's actually a developer in one of my teams. He's an old friend. He got me into Eve 2005. But all three of us used to work at the same place. Now that my boss has moved on to another, but we're not kind of coming back to Eve together. Me 2.5 years, like, and him 12 years, and then the first dude was like shorter than that. But we're kind of doing the same thing, like coming back to Eve and doing the whole small gang thing.
So, on that note, like, people playing Eve and just kind of coming across each other. Like, what got me back into Eve in 2017 was doing a rebuild on a motorcycle. A buddy that came and helped me was he was currently an Eve player. He's getting back into it again now, but something to do with the motorcycle. My ringtone was the whole alarm. So when my phone went off, I went, oh yeah. And he's like, wait, that sounds familiar. I'm like, yeah, it's the Eve Online whole alarm. It's like, I was like, you play Eve? And he's like, yeah. It's like, awesome. Yeah.
And you're already pros because you have that whole thing with motorcycle people. Yeah. Like, it's always your brother, right?
Yeah.
I was hoping that Niden's story was going to end with, and that's how I ganked my boss.
Giving me ideas. No, he's not flying anything fancy enough to do that, but I should definitely do that.
Yeah, that's why you have to convince him to multi-box golems and Podchiv and then call me.
I mean, the problem is he's so old that the stuff he thinks is precious is like throwaway. People have stacks of these things now.
Oof.
It doesn't matter how much it's worth, right? As long as it's worth a lot to him and you gank him, then it's still the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I used to.
He's not my boss anymore, so I should probably get away with it.
Right. We're off. That's funny. That's how I feel about NC. Now I can talk about him because I don't have Vince gonna throw me out of the alliance for talking about what's going on in nullsec. No, he never threatened or anything, but I always had that paranoia, right? The worker boss relationship. I forgot what I was going to say, but it is an interesting little tangent that we got on. Let's go back to evictions and talk about wormholes, because there was a lot of news in wormholes this week. Sorry it took so long to get here, because this is some of the bigger news in the game, actually. And at first we have HK and Laserhawks and Wormhole Society evicting Singularity Syndicate right now on Saturday. That's what the timers were set for. So we'll know what the verdict is on that. It looks pretty bad for Singularity Syndicate. We may actually have a show on this. Tiberius from TIS may do a wormhole show called The Anoikis Connection on this specific topic, because he says it's a bigger topic than just this battle. But Teddy's here, if he's still with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
What do you know about that first fight? Then we'll talk about the second one that you're involved with.
I'm not 100% sure on the sort of reasons why it's happening. But Laserhawks are professionals. It's going to be really hard for Snide to get anyone in, and even just try and fight them. As far as I'm aware, they're using Munins, so trying to fight nearly 200 Munins is going to be nearly impossible.
Oh yeah, those are
so
fast
it's
and
looking
hit
rough
hard
for them. Yeah.
So we'll find out why we did have the leader, the CEO of Singularity Syndicate on our, I believe it was Tuesday show, and I don't think we got to the bottom of it, but I think what he said, and it was a very interesting conversation, because Singularity Syndicate they're not necessarily nice guys, let's say, or they have a reputation for not being the nicest guys. But he was saying, yeah, we've done a lot of stuff that have made people angry, and we're paying for it now. And he kind of put it out there that people think that they deserve this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of wormholers remember. We have quite long memories. So if it sort of just slowly piles up in people's minds, and eventually just resentment builds up, and eventually you can convince a corpse to do evictions. And trying to convince someone to sit on a hole for 16 hours a day, keeping it crisp, is a hell of a commitment. So you need some really strong emotions to sort of force that to happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a tale of doom for Singularity Syndicate, we assume, but for you in the Foxholers, different story. What happened with you guys?
Sure. So sort of Wednesday night, mass pings go out on our Discord saying that Whole Control have arrived. We knew that they were coming, just not at what time. So we were all prepared, but Whole Control are professionals. They immediately put up an Astra, a POS, door stopped all the holes. So for the next day, we poked, prodded, snuck a few people in here and there, and then committed for our armor timer. I didn't think that we had enough to field Logi, so I put everyone in DPS, and we just went out and decided to try and just reship as fast as possible and try and just outlast them. And it seems to have worked.
Well, good job. So what? Oh, go ahead.
Sure. We were using Praxi with cruise missiles, and a very interesting module called the Target Spectrum Breaker, which, by the amount of targets that are currently locking that ship, it has a proportional effect to break that lock, going nearly to like 70% chance, I think. And against a Triglavian fleet, which Hull Control brought in, it gives you such an advantage on the time it takes for that ship to die, because nearly every single cycle of that, like a third of their fleet loses their lock, and that breaks the spool. So it just takes forever for these battleships to die.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is that module was kind of made for nullsec, where you have 100 people, 200 people aiming at one person, right? You know, target the primary. When that primary gets targeted, if he has that module and 100, 150 people are targeting him, those are great chances to break all those locks. Like, I think that's what that module was used for, but you're using it in wormholes, which has a smaller group of people, but enough to make it effective, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Well, it also counts drones, locking them. So all of the Leshaks had 4 sentries out. So for each Leshak, you have 5 targets locking you. So that just spikes the numbers.
Yeah, and there are neat little gimmicks that you can do too, because it doesn't really care about the lock that it's doing either. And like normal E-War, it's not chance-based. It's like, oh, you're locking me? Okay, you're not locking me anymore. I don't care what your scan res is. You could be a Titan, you're not locking me. You can be a triage, you're not locking me anymore. It will disrupt it. But you can put friendly rep bots on the target too, to like get to a certain threshold where when you push that target spectrum module, one of my favorite modules, by the way, is like this little blue burst comes out and it'll just like break something just under 60% of the incoming locks, regardless of what it is, once you hit a certain threshold of locks. And that threshold isn't even that big, right? So it's not like you have to have 1,000 people locking you. The last time I did the test, which was when the module first came out, that number was like under 100, where if you had the incoming locks of under 100, be it from drones or whatever, there was like a 60% chance it would break the incoming locks.
Well, the second thing is,
it's really cool.
The second thing that comes to mind is against Triglavian ships, lock breaking or target breaking or target lock breaking is a big deal because you reset their damage, right? Those things ramp up over time. And if you break it, they have to start over at the low damage setting and then work their way back up.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a genius use of a module that probably hasn't seen the light of day in fleet combat for 3 or 4 years, really. So it's really clever that you guys use that. It is one of my all-time favorite modules, just because when it came out, I was like really into theory crafting, and I made a doctrine specifically for it. Well, everyone was like, why are we fitting these mods? They're really dumb, guys. But I was like on a horse, so I needed to use it. So I'm just so happy to see it used, and to see it used like so brilliantly too. Because when I used them, the trig ships didn't exist, so there really wasn't that good of a reason to ever use them. I just thought they were fun. But it's just a genius way to fight a bunch of Leshaks and Drekavacs attacking you.
Yeah, and like some of our pilots literally were using them and managed to survive so long and de-aggress that they could literally just dock and repair.
It's a pretty ingenious use of the mechanics. I never would have thought of that. I've never used that module, actually. So.
But with fleets where you're going to have Logi try and keep you alive, it doesn't really make sense because you're going to break your Logi locks. But for us, where our entire game plan was to go out without Logi and just try and kill as many of them as possible before we all die, then it makes sense.
That is fun.
So good use of tactics and equipment, and I think you even generated some interest among other wormholers who were like, how did you do that? Right? Was there some residual questioning about
I think so, just because it's such a like almost a meme concept of just going out without any Logi to try and keep yourself or your FCs alive, and to literally rely on shipping with Atrons and bouncing off grid and coming back and just bringing more DPS.
Yeah, no wasted DPS.
Yeah. But I mean, we only really did it because we thought we were going to lose. We didn't think we had enough numbers to actually alpha them with Logi. So we just brought everyone.
So do you think the frigate escape bay being added to the battleships allowed people to get away and reship and come back and was vital to the fight?
100%. We wouldn't. I don't think we would have won that fight without the frigate escape bay. We would have just got podded because there was sabers on that grid, and without that, pods would have just got locked and killed.
Well, so you guys managed to win a battle. It's a pretty significant battle. What was it, 9 billion to 19 billion or something, I think. And what's going on with the eviction attempt now?
So over the next sort of day after that fight, we noticed that they would undock in groups of 15 and then poach from Filament out. So it seems that most of them have gone. But we'll know for certain. Well, we can never really know for certain if they've all gone, but it seems that it's over for now. Yeah.
All right. And if you want to read more about it, I encourage you to go to ashian.space. How to not get evicted. That's an article about this conflict, and you can read more about it on her website. She is the CEO, I believe, of Foxholers. Because of the naming conventions of ships in EVE Online is kind of weird. I blame you, Elise, for fox cats and slow cats and all this other stuff. When I heard Foxholers, I was like, Foxholers? What's Foxholers mean? And it was explained to me. Foxhole in a war zone, right? You jump into a foxhole. So anyway.
Oh wait, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
That wasn't immediately obvious.
There's another eviction recently too.
Was there? What's that?
Alexis Matari lost their wormhole.
Oh no, that's your group. What happened?
Yeah, it's tied into the group we're fighting in Fininar. They brought several hundred people and evicted us, put down the POS, put down the right to. We had a pretty big fight in the Asbel armor timer. Elise was there. I IFC'd it. And we did well on the Asbel armor timer, but then they took hull control right away and brought in like twice as many people, and we couldn't stand up to the numbers, especially since it was out of our time zone and in their time zone, despite being our structures, because our wormhole group is EU and most of the rest of us are US.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much, Teddy, by the way. From wormholes back to lowsec, some interesting stuff happening there. I'm just getting word here, and we'll try to flesh this out and do a whole segment on it from our mining expert, that NPCs are mining in lowsec, which is pretty interesting considering there's already a bottleneck on minerals that come from lowsec. To see players have to compete not only against other players that want to kill them in those areas, but now to compete against NPCs that are mining is an interesting development. We'll look into that. But also in faction war, I guess it's the pendulum war, as Arsia was calling it, because it swings back and forth. And what's going on now in faction war?
Well, the Minmatar Amar war zone flipped to Minmatar control after being Amar control for the past half a year to 8 months, which is about normal. The tier level of the faction warfare is more or less influenced heavily into a cycle where it flips back and forth based on feckless farmers who don't have real loyalty, who flip back and forth in order to make the maximum LP profit. It's mostly the actual PvPers fighting each other over the iHubs when the systems get pushed up. But when all the farmers flip against you, it's hard to fight against them as the actual PvPers and keep the enemy tier down. So the war zone flipped over to Minmatar control. A lot of fighting in EUTZ in Ardar. Ardar flipped to Minmatar, flipped back to Amar, flipped to Minmatar again. A lot of fighting has been in that system in EUTZ. And the farmers are flipping over to the other side, so the LP values will The Amar LP is a lower value now, so they're going to flip to the other side and farm the more valuable Minmatar LP and let the Amar LP value rise again before they cash it out.
All right. Thanks for that. And also in lowsec, there is the Fininar War. Do you want to tell us about that?
That's more highsec. That was
oh, sorry.
Parabellum, the group that evicted us, and that eviction came out of this war, was trying to take out all the other groups that had structures in the 0.5 system of Fininar, which is one of the highsec systems you can moon mine and everything in. It looks like they're trying to take control of that system exclusively, and EM has a structure there that's a memorial of the Hogs War when they pushed the Hogs collective pirates out of Minmatar space, and another group called Human Resources Project, which is a German group, had a structure there. So we're working with the German group to fight against these two pirate groups that are associated with one another that have been trying to kick us out of the system. And including the wormhole stuff, it's been like 80 to 90 billion ISK damages in the war in the last 2 weeks. So it's heating up with no signs of slowing down yet, unless they decide to yield in highsec since they had the victory in the wormhole space.
All right. A little bit of news from nullsec. Just in. We're hearing that the HIX Keepstar and period basis has been reinforced, or is being reinforced at this very moment. And in bigger news, a new PAPI Keepstar in QY1E that is Aquarius, right near the border.
Yeah, that's like the fake queer or fake whatever. It's the one that's right next to C3N. So it's that weird area of queers that also kind of feels like Delve.
Yeah.
The H1X or HIX one is kind of interesting because it's a bit of a sneak peek about what the PAPI game plan is when they want to siege these Keepstars. Yesterday, I think, was the day where that the index went from soft 2 to soft 3, which means, unless I'm horribly wrong about this, you can anchor the jammer at soft 3. And so that's kind of been the game plan for how the slow siege of Delve and the Imperium assets is going to be. Take over the iHubs, get it up to 3, put the jammer down so you can control when caps can and cannot be in the system. Then you siege the Keepstar like it's no biggie, because what are they going to do, right? If they can't get caps in the system, they'd have to then fight over the jammer. And, especially Legacy, they are very, very keen on fighting over jammers. Have tons of practice doing it from the war that they had, the Winter versus Winter Coalition. Oddly enough, both of those sides fighting together have a lot of experience fighting around jammers. So it's a cool little teaser as to what is to come, and the strategy that is around PAPI taking down these Keepstars.
Right. And the Imperium is aware of this because they actually put together a doomsday clock, I think, right? Something like that. Do you know what that's about?
It is their weird meme thing to get motivated. It's when like certain timers go to from soft 2 to soft 3, which is when like Keepstars can be attacked. I think actually the Imperium has been doing kind of really good at like getting rid of these iHubs and resetting the clock. They've done it a few times. I think they just did another one this week. They hit a Brave system and reset the iHub, or rather a system that Brave controlled the iHub in and reset it. So it's just interesting things are going on. They know what's coming. Like, this isn't a secret. This isn't like, oh, they had no idea this was coming. They're caught by a surprise. No, they knew. Like their path to saving as many Keepstars as they can is to reset the timers on these. And the Imperium strategy so far has been reset as many of these timers as you can and just try and draw this conflict out for as long as humanly possible, because they're confident that they win the long game. The Imperium is, that is, because they have a group that's worked together forever, And their view, whether it's right or wrong, their view is that the attacking forces are held together by this thin bond that they can hopefully break and shatter, which has been the cornerstone of their strategy all along. So it's kind of interesting to see it play out in real time.
Well, one thing that we didn't cover when we were talking about the war, so we'll go into this a little bit more because it's interesting, is that how many structures are being destroyed in and around Delve-Aquarius period basis, and a lot of those are being found to be completely abandoned. Their modules are taken out, the fuel is taken out, which makes these structures go into abandoned state. Now, what's going on with that?
So when it's in abandoned state, it's actually neat because they lose a quarter of their HP. That's just the same as when they're in low power. But they also have no timers. Like you can shoot them from shield all the way through armor, all the way through hull in one sitting. It's kind of nifty. And then at the end, they act like wormholes. So anything that's ever been inside of it, not just corp hangers, just personal hangers too, gets thrown out into space in these little hanger containers. So you can go in there and see what people had in their cans. So if someone, God forbid, has been inactive for some time and they never asset safety their stuff, then all their stuff gets looted out. And on that note, I do want to make one clarification from something that I said last week on the show, which I clarified even further after someone had asked me questions and Billy made a comment. So I got the actual answer. When there's the quantum core update is coming, or rather it's half of it is already here. The other half is coming January 12th, I believe, where if you do not have a quantum core in your structure, there's going to be a brand new state, and that doesn't exist yet. So you can be online full power, but core absent. And that does not create a low power state. It doesn't turn off services. What it does turn off is it disables tether, it disables fitting, and it disables repair. I think those are the services that gets disabled. But if you have other services, like if you have a cloning module on there, that stays active. And it doesn't cycle any of that stuff off. So you never hit low power, which means you never hit the abandoned state. So these legacy, not legacy, the coalition, but just legacy structures that don't have a core in them, you will never need to put a core in them in order to retain the services. So that's hugely important because otherwise the implication was, hey, this is going to start turning stuff off. If it turns it to low power, then all of a sudden, all these citadels go to abandoned in 6 days after low power. So on the 18th, you would have Reckoning Day in the new year where you could just loot all these structures and pick them clean. But nope, not happening. It does turn off tether, very important, repair and fitting, but not entirely crucial. So if you are a group that owns some high-sec citadels or low-sec citadels, you don't really have to rush to put a core in there, because I do know that groups are kind of flying around high-sec looking for citadels that have a core in them, and if they have a core in them, instantly you get a war deck because you make money on that kill, because the core always drops.
Well, it seems like the core is used to prevent, what do you call them, content Astor houses or something. Like you don't get the war capability of a structure without the core. So
exactly,
you gotta put some money in the pot if you're going to use it for war purposes.
But it's not like it's not going to be like this retroactive tax on owning a structure. I mean, it sort of is if you want to have tether, but if you don't care about tether and you just care about manufacturing and stuff like that, then it's not going to act as a retroactive tax where you have to put this thing in or lose your structure.
Well, so it's more puzzling to me because there is this idea that the Imperium needs to resist, needs to withhold, to survive this onslaught because they're outnumbered. So they can't possibly compete with twice the number. Why are they pulling fuel out of structures? It makes them weaker and it further incentivizes the people by rewarding them with loot pinatas.
I'm just guessing, so there might be another attraction next week, but I'm just guessing that a lot of these structures that you see that go into abandoned people, it's just the people that are operating them just don't care about them anymore. They're not worth the fuel, right? Because they know they're going to die anyways. So they're like, why am I paying 100 mil a day to bleed through what is inevitably going to happen on these smaller structures? these structures that aren't necessarily strategically significant. I'm sure the Imperium went through and audited all the structures that they have in their space, who owns them, and which ones they want to keep. I'm sure the FCs and the military people went like, we need this one, we need this one, we need these other 50, but we don't care about the rest, so do whatever you want with them. And the people are either trying to unanchor them if they can get away with it, maybe not so much now,
like a Keepstar,
or they're just not fueling them anymore. So when they run out of fuel, they're just going in, taking the modules off, and just letting them sit there, because why prolong the inevitable at a cost to yourself?
The interesting collateral damage here is people that are away from the game that had stuff stored there and didn't asset safety before they left, which is probably a good chunk of people.
Yeah, I think a lot of those actually have already been done before, right? Because there was that initial push in April of this year, right, where a structure that was low power, there was this new set of rules in place where if it's low power for 6 days, it goes to abandoned. And so all of those people that were mostly AFK from the previous years, they had citadels that they just weren't fueling because they didn't think they needed to. Because, and I don't want to get off too much, but I hate this mechanic. I think it's the worst, and people call me a Care Bear for it, but whatever. So I think that band-aid has been pulled off, right? So the mostly AFK people, they've already lost all their stuff already. And that stuff's already been exploded by other people, sometimes by the Imperium themselves. You saw in April, Imperium were shooting their own abandoned structures to get the stuff back to the people that went AFK before someone else did it.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that the AFK people, they're not losing anything anymore, right? Because once that patch came out, I'm sure there are emails like, just right-click asset safety if you're not going to come back to the game.
Right. So Araya, also from the Imperium, Anti-IS said that collateral damage are people that aren't in the Imperium anymore. There's also a bunch of people, probably me. I probably had some stuff in those stations that no, those were player stations. They're ones we're talking about. Never mind.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff in Null that I saw got destroyed and asset safety. And I was like, shit, I forgot about this stuff that I had like years ago in this system.
You know what sucks about that? I used to really worry when I came into Eve. I was like, this inventory is helpless. Like I can't possibly control inventory in Eve Online. There's a little bit over here. There's a little bit over there. It's like a child of divorced parents. You have one sock in one house and the other one in the other, and you can't put it all together. So I used to really hate that. And then I learned to embrace it. And here's how. It's your history. It shows where you've been. Just leave it there. It shows your path, and it shows what items, it's like a time capsule, what you were using at the time. So I have Drakes in deep Tenerife's, like, oh yeah, that reminds me that, at the time when Nully was using Drake fleets back in 2012.
The problem you get to a point where you have so many assets, nobody places you open the asset window and your game freezes, and I'm kind of there.
God. That must be
I'm kind of experiencing what you were talking about, Matt, now coming back. And of course, one of the first things you do is, what stuff do I actually have, right? So I end up looking through a lot of the places where I have more than 3 things. And it just like you mentioned, it's uncanny almost, because this was happening to me the other day. I was just thinking, oh shit, yeah, I remember I used to fly these, and there was this story, and there was that dude, and this thing happened. You have all these memories that you almost didn't realize that you had, right? But some quite dear memories, and some really moments that really affected me personally, I was reminded by this stuff flying around. And some of it's been there for a decade, man.
It's also a way of researching your past. Like, what was that thing I was doing? Where was that station? Oh, bam. I just looked in my inventory and found it.
That's such a good point, because when you look through your assets, well, at least I do look through my assets anyway, and I'm like, why do I have that there? And then I look at it for a second and it's like, oh yeah. I remember I was doing that thing in Khadora lowsec in 2011 where I didn't know what I was doing, and I have these ships that are shit fit there. And it's just like a trip down memory lane.
Well, I think of it in terms of, I used to live in Corazor. It was a little bit off the Corazor Prime. That's where my, industrial base was, but I forgot, it was somewhere there. And then if you look in your inventory, it was 2 jumps over. There it is, and there's some minerals still stuck there. I don't know. Has that happened to you, Suitonia, Hateless? You guys do any of that?
I found old mission fits which were god awful in my assets. I think I scooped it all up and brought it to Jita when I came back in the game. But yeah, it does take you down memory lane. You're like, what was I doing there? Oh, yeah. But
Suitonia?
I was gonna say, yeah, I still have like assets all over the place. Like my asset list is like really, really terrible. I used to have assets in like 900 different stations in Eve until I spent like 2 hours just contracting it to an alt, just so I could streamline it down to like 150 stations or something. But yeah, it's so bad. Like whenever I loot something, I just dock it up and leave it there, or just asset safety it by like putting it in a Citadel. So I've got like so stuff in so many stations. Like I have something like I think like 300 billion in assets, but my wallet is like almost always under like 10 bill.
yeah, I'm not even going to get into that portion. But I have actually in the system that I live in now, because I didn't know what it was before, I have a procure with the wrong amount of mining lasers on it, because it was bought back in the day before they changed them or something. I can't remember what it is, but I have a wrongly fit ship in the system that I live in now on a character that I don't use in the system. That's kind of funny.
I remember I docked up once. I'm like, I have a ship here, and I'm like, because I like exploded or something. I have a ship here, and I'm like, oh wait, it's a laser getting right. That doesn't work anymore. Right?
I think the dearest things that I found was some of my oldest kind of stashes of loot that I'd gotten as a pirate in the early days of Eve. Those were still around, actually, and I found those, and I'm never moving those because that's really some of my fondest memories of the game.
All right. What about you, Elise? Anything like that?
So like when some of these structures are in Delver blowing up and getting stuff sent to Ermelin, which is nice. So it's all going back to one central spot. Most of the stuff is, as in PL, we lived in NPC stations, so all that stuff is still there. But I do have some like random covert ops cloaks that hang around that I just keep, even though they're not worth that much anymore. But when I first started PvPing, covert ops cloaks were selling for like 60 to 80 mil. So whenever you killed something that had a covert ops cloak, it was like huge payday coming, and you had to like jettison the rest of your loot because they're so heavy. They take up so much space that you can only carry like 1 or 2. And so I have, especially near Nadi in that area, because I lived or I was pirating up in the north there, I have so many just random cloaks that I looted and never got around to selling when I actually needed the 80 mil, which was like a significant amount of money back then, because it could replace like an entire ship and a set of rigs for me as well. So,
or replace your pod.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was new, so my clone only cost like 5 million. But yeah.
All right. Thanks for walking down that rabbit hole with me. I think that's pretty much all the news we have. There's one other thing. I'm going to see if we can get a mining expert in here. I'm not sure that we can. Yeah, he can come in just a second. So let's do a song and dance, because there's some interesting stuff going on with mining. And I've noticed I've been doing a lot of, well, once a month, we'll get you behind the scenes a little bit here at Talking in Stations, but once a month we have a meeting. It's an all staff meeting where we kind of give the progress of what we're doing. Is the work being appreciated? Is the work getting out to people? The content that we're creating. And in doing so, I do a heavy amount of like analytics beforehand to see like, are we hitting KPIs, key performance indicators? Are we on the right track? All those decisions have to be made every month to make sure that when we're experimenting with things that we're going in the right direction. And so I was looking through a lot of analytics yesterday, and I noticed something that I'm going to put out there publicly because this should be a little secret, right? A little thing that you analyzed and figured out. And we should use it to our benefit and not tell everybody. But I'm telling this to all content creators. the shows that do well are almost not related to anything except a few things. Is it timely? Is it the right people talking about it? And other than that, right, like if you have a big mineral change, boom, big show, have the right people on it, even bigger. And like Kenneth, for instance, doing a mining stuff is great. Great content for a great and timely topic. Those shows always do well. They'll do better than when we have CCP on. They'll do better than when we have celebrities on or whatever. But the other little secret is shows that do really well are related to how do I make money in EVE Online? Mining and economy. People want to know about that. And it's obvious when you think about it, but we get so worked up in our own, oh, we need to have like the biggest names in EVE Online that we all talk about over and over again, that you get lost. People lose that narrative. It's like the club of people that do these shows all bounce off each other when the reality for players is totally different than what we think is important. That's why we try to get people from all walks of life in EVE and with high expertise. And we try to dig into news all around the game rather than just that. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get Estrella on in time, but let me just open it up to you guys. If you have any questions in chat, let us know. And you guys here on the panel, is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't cover?
Well, there's one thing I just wanted to mention, but it was kind of, it's not particularly good, but I guess I can do it now if we're desperate.
Go.
Just a note on, I spent a couple of years in factional warfare, and I know it's like the kiddie pool of EVE Online. Nobody cares about factional warfare, but being in that kind of sub sphere of the EVE ecosystem and kind of taking it seriously, to put it, it becomes its own thing. It has its own kind of effects, and it's a lot of fun when you're in there. You expect the pendulum to swing, and you know these things swing back and forth in this way. And you've seen it all before, but it kind of becomes, you get involved, it becomes fun in a kind of more casual way than some of the big wars we're used to. It's kind of small in scale, it's cheap, it's throwaway stuff, but it has its own value. There are a lot of interesting, like small storylines in factional warfare that, never make it outside, I guess.
So I hear sometimes people refer to faction warfare as like the kiddie pool, but I think that's not accurate at all.
No, it's not. I wrote entire articles about it not being accurate because the thing that factional warfare did, which is it's kind of institutionalized training of some really bloody awesome PvPers, right? Because you didn't really, unless you were there to just farm and avoid people, if you were at all interested in PvP, you learned a lot of really good fundamentals about fighting in factional warfare in a way that I don't think is supported in any other kind of area of EVE as much as in factional warfare. So a lot of the skills that I picked up, those few I had, were because I was fighting a lot. I mean, every day it was fighting in lowsec. And there was good content, man. Even though it's cheap, even though it doesn't make the headlines, even though people there aren't rock stars that get to show up and talking stations and stuff.
I mean,
it was still
is that really true? Like, I made most of, I was a 7-year faction warfare player. Like, I'm here, right?
You're a rock star.
Right? I think a lot of the big names in faction warfare are kind of rock stars. Maybe not to the people who fly in null, but the people who fly in null aren't rock stars to the faction warfarers either. So that's just fair.
Well, we can dive deeper into that topic. We'll dive deeper into that topic later on because I think there's a lot there, Niden. And I'm glad you're here too to bring those topics up. One last thing I wanted to cover, and this is why I was buying a little bit of time here, is Estrella Khan is from Ushra Khan, I believe, or actually a group affiliated with Ushra Khan. How are you doing, Estrella? Did I say your name right? Oops, can you hear me? Don't think he can hear me. We'll get that worked out.
He's not.
Yeah, we'll get that worked out, Niden. let's actually finish what you were saying.
Oh, you think I still remember what I was saying?
Well,
You're an old man like I am.
things with like faction warfare, when I think about things that have happened in faction warfare, I think of like way back when Amara was down to one system remaining, and it was Satogas. And Satogas held, to this day, it's called Satograd by a lot of old faction warfare people. Satograd shall not fall. Satogas held, the Amara came back from one system and took the whole war zone. And that's how they got their medal for the first time. That whole war zone had been taken down from one war zone to capturing it before the other side. More recently, Flossus Win was a gigantic conflict over a number of months that had billions and billions and billions destroyed, started by some news articles and a shit post on the IGS. And like, there's just been so many different wonderful events in faction warfare. Like last week, Usher Khan had their 16th anniversary event / tournament / party. And like just going over the years of the stuff that have happened in those few regions, and there's a lot of really great moments, and I'm sure the Galente and Caldaria Warzone is the same, right?
Yeah, you've got things like you've also got like the fall of like the holding of Valir back in 2016, I think.
Yeah, there's lots of great storylines. I mean, I suppose I sound a bit more negative than I intended to, and I am on that side of things as well. I think there's a lot of great storylines that were going on there, but just looking at faction warfare as normally perceived as by a lot of EVE players, especially in nullsec, it's like, oh, nobody cares about faction warfare. It's just it's contrived. That's the way they look at it. It's contrived. It's a contrived system that people are kind of playing along with, and it doesn't feel it's not EVE like.
So I have a story. Everybody tends to emphasize the area of the game they play and sometimes put down other areas of the game. Like going back to the Amar tournament, when we got our brackets, one of the other people in our bracket for the preliminaries was another militia group, and another person in the bracket was Elise Randolph. And I didn't know who Elise Randolph was. I was scared about this other militia group that I knew was a good militia group. And somebody was like, how are you going to deal with Elise Randolph? And I'm like, I don't care about some null Care Bears. Like, right? They just they don't have 100 people to press F1, right? And I was wrong, right? I was wrong because nullsecers, I didn't appreciate nullsec because I didn't do nullsec. I didn't understand nullsec. Elise Randolph is really good at the game. Right? But I was in my own bubble, and I prioritized things that I knew and the people that I knew. And since then, I have interacted with nullsecers more and wormholers more, and I've tried to learn more about every area of the game to try to... And I respect pretty much everybody from highsec to wormholers now, because every area of the game is really hard to learn individually. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap.
Yeah, that's one of the things that... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's one of the things that I'm really happy that I ran on the CSM for, because when I ran on the CSM, I was, I was just someone who played in nullsec and did wars and stuff and had fun in my own little element, and I thought that was the best way to play EVE was the way I played, and then to Arsia's point, I think that's how most people feel too. But after I was on the CSM, I really broadened my horizons as to how different people played the game and actually had fun and had a good time, and how it was actually challenging and pushed boundaries that I wasn't aware even existed in the game. So it is really neat, and oftentimes like humbling when you run across someone that plays a different game than you, but also the same game. Like they play EVE, but they play a completely different version of the game. And last week's show, if you guys didn't catch it, this was like absolutely picture perfect description of this between DBRB and Hateless. Like they had completely polar opposite views about like everything you can imagine. And it just goes to show, like, we're playing this game, but we just have completely like different experiences, and it's very fun.
Each other, like eye rolling was going back and forth. I think.
Yeah, it was great. It was one of my favorite moments. The show was like off the walls at some points because the boat is just being boat. But that was just like, it was like the perfect representation of this notion that like everyone has a different weird experience in the game, and they're drastically different, but they're also viable. So it was just fun.
Yeah. All right. And Niden, one last thing, and we'll wrap up. That is the idea that the old tropes, I don't know if it's tropes, but the cliches and all that, those have actually changed quite a bit. Like, I don't think that faction war gets dismissed as much as they did. Highsec certainly doesn't get dismissed as much as it did. It's because CCP has put the emphasis on NPCs in highsec, or NPCs in Empire space, and taken away so much from nullsec that it does feel like the game is really starting to move in a direction of more things being viable, more things being interesting. It might just be talking in stations purview of the game, but it does feel like nullsec is a lot less the it game than it used to be.
Interesting. And good to hear as well, I might add.
Yeah.
Everywhere is the it game. Everywhere.
That's a good note to end on. Thank you guys very much. Arsia, Elise, Hateless, Suitonia, Niden, Teddy, and also, of course, Maccloud, our engineer, who's always moving things around. We're not going to get to Astrea today. We will try to get next week. He is a miner from lowsec that works with Usher Khan and stuff. But we're having technical issues. So next time. And I would like to also thank all the people who stuck around with us for the full 2 hours. We got to find a way to make these shows a little more concise. We have just too much good information coming through. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week on Talking in Stations.